going to air it out. Down the field. Catch and the touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We're presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Bring you up to 9 a.m. here on this Saturday morning. And just a quick broadcasting note, we are pre-taping this on Friday. Okay, this is a pre-tape broadcast only because the Pac-12 championship is on a Friday night. So special exception this week. That's right, it's week 14 in the college football season, and now it's conference championship weekend. Pac-12 tonight. The other Power 5 conferences are tomorrow. In our picks this year, 37, 26, and 2. We've gotten back on a roll the last 2 weeks, 3-2, and 3, 1-1 over the last 2 weeks, respectively. Week 13 was good to us, 3-1 and 1. The one loss was the Rutgers game. My Rutgers Scarlet Knights, plus 1.5 at home against Maryland. Oof, they got blown out. Terrible. Terrible way to end the year. 5-7 year for them. Oof, rough one. We have a lot to get into today for the weekend. Of course, the conference championship games, the college football playoff scenarios, my picks so you guys can win some money, but also the coaching carousel in college football, which is absolutely bonkers, folks. It is absolutely bonkers. I mean, seriously, could you imagine a week like this that we just had this past week? So I was thinking about this before. You look at Florida, right? Florida's a big job. Florida's a huge job in the SEC. They fired Dan Mullen with a week to go, and they end up hiring Billy Napier. All right, once their season is concluded, they hire Billy Napier. Boom, he's their new head coach. He's coming over from Louisiana. All right, Raging Cajuns. He was great over there. Great over there. It's a huge hire. Big name. He's been in these circles, and he's been in these conversations over the last year or two of when he's going to take a step up to the Power 5. This was his moment. And guess what? Not only did Rivalry Weekend, which, by the way, I'd even talk about here at the top of the show. Again, we are basically a week removed from that, and we're on to the championship games. But Michigan beats Ohio State for the first time under Jim Harbaugh. Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma. Alabama has a classic Iron Bowl win over Auburn. Michigan State beats Penn. We had obviously the Florida State game was back and forth, despite the fact that it was two teams that were fighting for bowl contention somehow. It was all overshadowed by Lincoln Riley and then Brian Kelly a couple days later. Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma, he heads to USC, and Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame, and he goes to LSU. Now, I'm going to tell you why. The one that surprised me more was Kelly leaving Notre Dame, going to LSU, rather than Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma to USC. And for one, you look at Lincoln Riley, and to me, that was a job for Riley that they were in contact with him. That's my assumption. Now, reports will indicate that that was USC's target all along, but Riley's only going to come out and say, well, it came together very fast. I talked to him the one time, and it came together over a 24-hour period, which is total nonsense. Deals like that don't happen like that, especially when you're a guy named Lincoln Riley, who is one of the best coaches in the country. You're leading a 10, even though this is a down year for Oklahoma, and they were 10-2. They were 10-2, and because they struggled their way to 10 wins. They struggled their way to 10 wins. That's a bad year for Lincoln Riley. Not a bad year, but a down year. They don't make the Big 12 title game, and they're not going to make the playoff. All right, that's fine. You can't tell me that a coach of that caliber gets a huge deal like this to USC over the course of a day or two. No way. Now, USC might have made him their target initially when they fired Clay Helton. Like, look, we need to make a huge splash to get USC back on the map in terms of the Pete Carroll days, the Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart days. We need that USC football back. How do you do that? Well, you bring in Lincoln Riley. How do you do that? Well, how do you bring in Lincoln Riley? You give him a blank check and say, well, you can have whatever you want. Just keep recruiting the crud out of California. To all those California recruits that are leaving the Bay Area to go to Oklahoma to go play for you at a historic institution, yeah, keep them all home in the LA area. That's fine. Keep them all home. Have them play for the Trojans. Have them play for Pac-12 titles every year. Have them play for college football playoff trips every year. Have them play for national titles every year. But at USC, the bigger college football brand over the last 20 years than Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma's been far more successful than USC since USC's heyday under Pete Carroll. That's fine. But there's no way. Lincoln Riley said, USC's open. Oh, they're calling me right after the Oklahoma State game loss. Okay, yeah, maybe, they're going to offer me X amount of dollars. Yeah, okay, I'll go there. No, this was planted, folks. The Kelly thing might have happened more recently, and again, Coach O was already announced to be gone at the end of the year. We're talking about a little bit more than halfway through the season. They said they're going to part ways, but at the end of the season, there was no interim coach, but they got a head start on the next coach. Now, maybe they thought it was going to be Brian Kelly. Maybe they always wanted Brian Kelly, but don't forget, Mel Tucker was looked at a lot by LSU. All right, there's a lot of rumblings between Michigan State's Mel Tucker and LSU. You can't tell me otherwise. It's as simple as that, folks. It's as simple as that. And once Michigan State decided to say, you know what, Mel, we're going to give you a 10-year deal not for $95 million. You're not going anywhere. Mel's like, where do I sign? He's the second. He'd be at the time second highest paid college coach behind Nick Saban. And now I think Kelly and Riley are going to surpass him, aside from, of course, Saban is well and above and beyond everybody else. But Tucker set the precedent for the rest of these contracts, as in James Franklin's contract at Penn State with a 10-year deal, Lincoln Riley's deal with USC, to say, hey, Lincoln, you're locked into Oklahoma, right? That's one of the best jobs in America. Come over to USC, because we're going to give you X amount of dollars. Oklahoma's not going to be able to match that. Even if they want to, you're going to want to come here anyway. And that's what they did. LSU did the same thing to Brian Kelly, because again, you do not leave Notre Dame. That's why I was more shocked at Kelly leaving Notre Dame than Riley to USC. Now, I was shocked for both. Don't get me wrong. I didn't think Riley was going to leave Oklahoma for Notre Dame. Oklahoma for USC. I didn't think that was going to happen. That was not on anybody's radar. It came out of nowhere. That was done so quietly. I mean, props to USC for hiding that pretty much all season long. I don't know how they did it. So when you look at this, Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma. Oklahoma's bound for the SEC. Now, there's a lot of things where you're going to say, the SEC's coming, right? The SEC. Oklahoma is going there with Texas, and people want to say, well, Riley took the easy way out. You could say that because the Pac-12 is easier than the SEC, but I would not be shocked if that was in the back of his head. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be in the Big 12 for a few more years. They're going to expand by the time we leave. You get Cincinnati, UCF, Memphis, and Houston. Yeah, they're all going to be Big 12 schools, but it's not going to be the Big 12 when we leave necessarily. And they're only coming in because us and Texas are leaving. But wait, we have to play Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia. Oh, Ole Miss, Arkansas. Oh, Auburn. The SEC West alone. I mean, forget Vanderbilt, Missouri. And South Carolina's on the up and up now. But I mean, mainly I'm talking about the SEC West. Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas. Oh, we have to play those teams year in and year out? And Texas? Yeah, no thanks. I know they've owned Texas lately, but no thanks. No thanks. I would understand that, so I'm not totally shocked by that. But if you're Brian Kelly, you've made the college football playoff twice, right? You made the college football playoff twice. You made it last year. And again, they were a de facto member of the ACC last year. I get that. That's fine. But they made it as an independent. He's also made a championship game as an independent when it was the BCS. Remember they played Alabama when you had to be a top 2 team? He's gotten this to that level before. Now, he wants to say he is going to, he wants to win national titles with the best players in the country at LSU. Okay, you could say that at Notre Dame as well. You had those opportunities. In fact, folks, they're number 6 right now. In case you forgot the playoff rankings that were revealed earlier this week. They're number 6 right now. You mean to tell me that there's not a shot they can get in? I know we're pre-taping this on a Friday for the championship games, but if you have 2 teams in front of you lose, as in Oklahoma State if they lose to Baylor, I mean, Baylor could jump Notre Dame. Don't get me wrong. They could. But they'll have 2 losses. Notre Dame has 1 loss. It's the Cincinnati. So ideally, if you're Notre Dame, the perfect scenario to get in, and we'll talk about all the scenarios in the next segment. But ideally, if you're Notre Dame, and this is why Brian Kelly, the move was so curious. Brian Kelly could have had Notre Dame in the playoff in the top 4 if Oklahoma State loses, Cincinnati wins, which is totally possible, and then one of Michigan or Alabama loses. Now, Michigan losing to Iowa is tougher than Alabama losing to Georgia. But all you need is Oklahoma State to lose, and then you need one of the 2 through 4 to lose. Because Georgia's going to get in no matter what. If they lose to Alabama, they're still going to get in. So all you need is 2 teams to lose. Okay, do the math, folks. You're at number 6, and you need 2 teams to lose. And the only teams below you that are playing for conference titles are Oregon and Baylor. And Baylor's playing Oklahoma State. And they both have 2 losses. You have 1 loss. If you have Cincinnati win, now, it'd be better off if Cincinnati does win because it helps Notre Dame's case because they would lose to an undefeated playoff team. That's their only loss of the year. So as long as Cincinnati wins and then you have Michigan, Alabama, and Oklahoma State, 2 of those 3 teams lose, you're getting in. It's as simple as that. You're going to get in. I don't see what's so complicated about that. But now he has to go into basically a rebuilding job at LSU. Because for one thing, folks, if you talk about the recruit, and again, we know why he left. He left because of money. 10 years, $95 million. And how I alluded to Tucker and Franklin before, Tucker was pursued by LSU. Franklin was presumably pursued by USC, although I think Riley was the top choice, of course. But my thing with Tucker is Michigan State had to give him that type of money. But don't forget, Mel Tucker is a barely above a 500 coach. He was 5-7 at Colorado his first year, his first and only year. Michigan State hires him to 2-5 or whatever they were last year in a shortened season, and they happen to be 10-2 this year. You don't give a guy like that with that kind of career track record in 3 years a 10-year deal for $95 million, unless someone else is going to try to get him, and you really want to keep your coach to build this program for a year. And don't get me wrong. Based on this year's success, I do think Michigan State is going to be a contender, at least in the Big Ten, for at least the next 4 to 5 years. Prime contender. All right, that's the case. But here's the thing: what do you give Tucker? Do you give him an extension? Sure, you give him an extension. You can give him an extension for this year. Absolutely. That's the way college football works. You got to build these recruiting classes. You got to project to the future. I get that, but you don't give Tucker, a guy with that kind of career record who has 1 great year, and it's not even over yet. They didn't make the Big Ten title game. They got blown out by Ohio State. You're waiting on their bowl game. You did not see how it ended yet. They already gave him the 10-year extension, and he signed. But they knew LSU was after him, and that's based on my understanding. That's my educated opinion. They knew LSU was going to try to get him. They wanted him first. LSU wanted him first. The Kelly thing happened later. USC probably always wanted Riley. So when Michigan State hears about this, they have to give him an offer he can't refuse. Like The Godfather. Come on, it's a very cliche analogy, but you give him an offer he can't refuse. You give Tucker a 10-year, $95 million deal. There's no possible way he's going to say no unless LSU tops that. Tucker could say Michigan State's where I want to be. Michigan State was the end goal. However he phrased it. This is the peak type of job. No. If LSU gives you that type of money first, you're going there. But Michigan State was quick on it, and they said, here's the paperwork. Here's a pen. Sign it real quick so you're locked in. Now the buyout's low, so it depends. We'll see what happens in the future. But for now, he's going to be at Michigan State for the next decade with that type of money. So they know that. Now he sets the market. So now you know other schools can offer that type of money, if not more, with talk about resources and other types of perks, i.e. USC to Lincoln Riley and i.e. LSU to Brian Kelly. They can offer that type of stuff, and guys are going to say yes to that. That's why Penn State offered James Franklin a 10-year, $75 million deal, or however it was. It's going to be in the neighborhood of $75 million. Less than Tucker, but still it's a huge contract. Something Franklin probably did not deserve after this year. They went 7-5. They struggled last year. They have not been the same team since they won the Big Ten a few years ago, which is fine. They're still a respectable program right now. He's done a great job at Penn State. He's won a Big Ten title. They have not made the playoff. Now, USC is not going to give James Franklin Lincoln Riley money. But when Penn State hears about USC's potential interest in James Franklin, maybe some other jobs, they're going to give him that deal to lock him in if they really want him, which they did. LSU really wanted Brian Kelly. So how do you bring Brian Kelly away from Notre Dame? You have to give him money like Mel Tucker. And if Notre Dame's not going to give him that money, LSU certainly will if you really want him. And sure enough, they wanted him. They gave him the money. He takes it. He's going to LSU. Now I kept asking myself, why would you leave Notre Dame? And I really don't think you should be leaving Notre Dame. But he went to LSU, which is arguably a better job than Notre Dame. It's tough. It depends on how you look at it. Notre Dame's an independent. They're a contender every single season, at least under Kelly. You have resources. You got a hotbed. You're a hotbed. You're in the hotbed of recruiting in the Midwest. LSU's in the South, though. Better climate. That also helps. SEC, national championships. They also have a history, just like Notre Dame. LSU's more of the recent history, especially because of Coach O, and in the mainstream, based on, Go Tigers and the 2019 season. I get that. But they arguably have more resources and they can arguably pay you more money. Now, I don't know if Kelly went back to Notre Dame and said, yeah, can you give me this or I'm gone? And they probably said no. There's been rumblings that Kelly has wanted big money and Notre Dame was not going to give him that type of big money. If that's the case and you want the money, you want to get paid, I'll never disrespect anybody for taking the money. But you don't leave Notre Dame. That's why it was shocking. Kelly has this team and this school in position for a national title virtually every year. Again, they're independent, and based on the way the playoff is formatted, they probably need to go 11-1, 12-0 every year to make the playoff because they're not playing a conference schedule. They're not playing for a conference title, sans last year, which they did and lost to Clemson. Now, they beat Clemson, and they lost to them in the championship game. Again, COVID year, so they joined the conference temporarily. So that aided them last year. But they've also made the playoff as an independent. And again, they made back then in the BCS, I think, 2011, 2012, they made the BCS national championship game. They got killed by Alabama. And that was the Manti Te'o year. They got killed, but they still made it to the national championship game. So you mean to tell me you can't do it at Notre Dame? You absolutely can. You just haven't won the big game. In their two playoff appearances, particularly last year, you got blown out. You got blown out in your semifinal games. Most of these semifinal games are blowouts. But you mean to tell me that you can't win one if you can at least get there? If you can at least get to the Final Four, then you can take the next step and win the big one. What's going to be different at LSU, aside from the fact that you're playing a much harder schedule? You have Nick Saban in your own division. You have Jimbo Fisher in your own division. You have Lane Kiffin, Sam Pittman. I said Lane Kiffin already. Mike Leach, Brian Harsin. Those are all in your division. And then if you play the cross-divisional games, you have Kirby Smart. And now Billy Napier at Florida. Mark Stoops doing a heck of a job at Kentucky. Shane Beamer might have South Carolina breathing now. Eli Drinkowitz at Missouri is whatever. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt's whatever. Josh Heupel, Tennessee looks not legit, but again, everybody's back on the rise now. There were really no bad teams in the SEC this year. I'm pretty sure every team in the SEC, sans Vanderbilt, made a bowl game this year. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure 13 to 14 teams in the SEC were bowl eligible this year. And 2 of them can make the playoff anyway. And they're playing for the SEC title right now. Or Saturday, tomorrow. Again, pre-taping on Friday because of the Pac-12 tonight. I'm just saying, folks. That's why I'm shocked. I was shocked by Kelly going to LSU. But that's what happens. Stuff like that can happen. The floodgates have opened, and now we have to wait and see what Oklahoma does. That's the biggest job left open right now. Virginia opened on Thursday, by the way. I mean, Virginia's not one of these jobs, of course, but it's a Power 5 job, ACC. It's a good job. Bronco Mendenhall stepped down unexpectedly. He wanted to step away from the game of football. And that's fine. So it remains to be seen what happens with that job. But Oklahoma's a huge job now. Brent Venables, defensive coordinator over at Clemson, he's taking that job. Who knows? Who knows where Oklahoma goes from here? But we know Lincoln Riley poached everybody from Oklahoma to go to USC, coaches, recruits included. Kelly, I don't know about the recruits, but his coaches didn't want to go. He wanted Marcus Freeman, his D coordinator, and Tommy Rees, his offensive coordinator, come to LSU with him, making him the highest paid assistants in college football. It didn't happen. Marcus Freeman's now the new head coach of Notre Dame, and Tommy Rees stayed at Notre Dame as the offensive coordinator. Tommy Rees has full control over that offense at Notre Dame because Marcus Freeman is now the head coach, and he's a defensive guy. So Rees has full control. You think he's fine? I'm sure he'll get a pay raise. Freeman's obviously going to get a pay raise now that he's named the head coach, according to reports, but it's basically a done deal. Notre Dame's going to keep it the way it is. We lost Kelly? Fine. Committee, look at us. We're fine. We'll promote in-house. Made a quick decision. That opening was gone in a flash. They like what they have. It's frankly unbelievable. It really is. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we will dive into the college football playoff scenarios with the top 10 teams. Yes, I said top 10. There's still some chaotic stuff that can happen where some of these teams in the top 10, even as Oregon at number 10, could somehow sneak into the playoff. Don't think it's going to happen, but it's fun to talk about as well. Then we'll go into my picks at the end of the show. We'll try to nail all of these conference championship games based on these interesting lines we got during the week. All right, it's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Happy on College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Nick Kosko with you, taking up to 9 a.m. Just a programming note, of course, we are pre-taping this on a Friday just due to the Pac-12 championship game tonight between Oregon and Utah. That's right, they play on a Friday, so we have bumped up our schedule, and we'll have this show ready to go for you, of course, bright and early tomorrow morning. So, of course, we're going to be picking the Pac-12 championship here today, and on Saturday morning, it's going to sound like I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm either right or wrong, as in if I didn't realize the game already happened. But that is the case right now. Of course, we are doing this on a Friday. All right, so we just talked about the wild coaching carousel. We'll dive into these college football playoff scenarios moving forward for the top 10. And it is very interesting that there is a path for all the top 10 teams. There is some sort of path. And I will break it down with you. And you can also find this at 247sports.com that I primed up for our site earlier this week. It is interesting because Oregon actually could get in. They're number 10. They could get in. It's just going to depend. A lot of these are committee dependent, which I hate. It should be more concrete, but unfortunately it isn't. And there's a lot of opinion has to go around, of course. But the fact of the matter is, Oregon must win the Pac-12. They must win it convincingly because this is a Utah team that already smacked them earlier in the year. Or I shouldn't even say earlier in the year, just a few weeks ago. Oregon went on the road at Utah, lost 38-7, dominated, absolutely dominated. And don't forget, they lost to Stanford earlier this year as well. Oregon did. So, not a good loss, and a bad loss to a good Utah team. Now, if they split the series, that's fine. They can beat Utah. They cancel each other out, but they will become Pac-12 champs at 11-2. And again, the problem is no two-loss team has ever made the college football playoff. Now, we'll get into that with Alabama leading up or coming up, which is still possible somehow. But you look at Oregon, and also Baylor, by the way. You look at them, they have a win over number 7 Ohio State. Now, Ohio State now has 2 losses. Now, if they were playing for a Big Ten title, they were still number 2, this would help Oregon's case. But it doesn't. Oregon beat Ohio State on the road. Great win. They're number 7. But I don't know if Ohio State's going to move because of the fact they have 2 losses and they're not playing for a title. Michigan beat them. Michigan's playing Iowa for that title, for that Big Ten title. So they, with a win over Utah, we could see them go as high as 6. But then the committee has to be convinced big time if they're going to move up 6 spots. They have to be highly convinced. And the fact that Oklahoma State plays Baylor in the Big 12 title game does not help either. Either way, the winner of that game is going to be ahead of Oregon, most likely. So they need a lot of teams to lose in front of them. Now, I guess you could say it would be ideal if Baylor lost. Maybe, but because they would have 3 losses, they would jump Baylor right in front of them, and they would probably jump the other teams that were idle. But then you would, are they going to jump Notre Dame? I don't know. They're not going to jump Oklahoma State after that because Oklahoma State would be a 1-loss team, Big 12 champ. You would need Cincinnati to lose. You would need Alabama to lose. And then you would need Michigan to lose. Frankly, their best bet is probably to have Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State to all lose. All those teams are playing for a conference title. If they all lose, they all drop, and they're all gonna be out. Then you have to worry about who's in front of you. The idle teams in front of Oregon could steal those spots just because they were already ranked ahead of Oregon. But again, if Oregon wins the Pac-12 title, that weighs more in the committee's eyes. So they could jump up. And the spots will be open, but those spots are going to start being filled, i.e. Notre Dame's going to go in there. Let's just say 2 through 5 all lost. Notre Dame's going to slide in there. Then you're going to see maybe Ohio State slide in there anyway. But if Ohio State's in, Oregon's got to be in because they beat them head-to-head, at least in my mind. Ole Miss could sneak in there. Baylor's probably going to get in there. At that point, if everybody loses and Baylor wins and all three of those spots are open, Notre Dame's going to get in. Baylor probably should get in. And then it's going to come down between that last spot, a 2-loss Ohio State team, a 2-loss Bama team, or a 2-loss Ole Miss team, or a 2-loss Oregon Pac-12 champ team. They could get in at that point, but they need total chaos. But I think at that point, if you see everybody lose, then you're going to see, all right, who out of the 2-loss teams is going to get in. But would Michigan still stay in there? Because they're 11-1. They would lose to Iowa, but it depends how far they're going to move Iowa up. Iowa's 13. Iowa could jump Michigan, so would Iowa take precedence, 11-2, as a Big Ten champ? It's a big cluster there, folks. Oregon needs total chaos, and then they need the committee to basically flip a coin and say, Oregon, yeah, you're good enough out of all these 2-loss teams to be the last team in. Because Notre Dame, if all that happens in front of them, Notre Dame's going to slide up and get in. And then it's a matter of how high they're going to rank Ohio State and Michigan and that head-to-head factor. How much is Baylor going to jump up, and will Ole Miss be a factor? So now we'll go to Baylor at number 9. Okay, so Oregon needs absolute total chaos, and then we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Now, Baylor with a win over Oklahoma State, they can go to number 6, if not number 5, with a win. Now, because Notre Dame is idle, you would think Baylor being number 5, Oklahoma State would put Baylor at least in the number 5 spot. Because again, they would jump Ole Miss, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. They're all idle. Those are the 3 teams in front of them. They're all idle. You would think they would jump them, but they would also need total chaos. Probably, again, Cincinnati, Bama, and Michigan all have to lose for them to get in. But even if Baylor just wins, they'll knock out Oklahoma State. They'll move up to at least 5, but they need a spot to open. And frankly, because they're a 2-loss team, even if just one spot opens, that spot could go to Notre Dame over Baylor. Because again, Notre Dame is a 1-loss team. It also depends on who loses. Say Cincinnati loses, then Notre Dame is canceled out because their one loss was to Cincinnati. And we don't know. And I say, how they're going to weigh 1 and 2-loss teams, but frankly, we do know the exception. By the way, Cincinnati, if they lose, they're done. Is there a group of 5 school? The committee's not going to like that at all. Is there one loss was to a Houston team? Again, Houston is ranked. Houston is number 21 in the country. But we know the committee's not going to like a 1-loss Cincinnati team. If you're a group of 5, you have to be undefeated to even have a shot. That's why they have a shot this year. So it's going to depend on who loses. Ideally, Baylor would probably want Cincinnati to lose for that spot to open up, because then it would cancel out Notre Dame, and they would jump them anyway and probably slide into that spot. And then if Alabama beats Georgia, they're both going to probably get in. But if Alabama loses, they're probably going to be out. So Baylor is more of a win, and then we'll see situation. Because they'll jump Ole Miss, they'll jump Ohio State. At that point, at least in my mind, winning a Big 12 title over the number 5 team. Then it's just a matter of who's actually going to lose. If Cincinnati wins, then Notre Dame might take precedence over Baylor. So they might have to. If you're Baylor, you might have to root for Cincinnati to lose, and then maybe one more loss, whether it's Michigan or Alabama, one of those 2, and then maybe you can get in. I initially wrote you probably need all 3 of them to win, but you never know. Again, if you win, you need at least 2 of them. And don't forget Oregon's behind you. If chaos happens, and if Oregon and Baylor both win and chaos happens, that's when it gets even more chaotic. It's like, all right, who do you weigh that's better? Baylor is ranked ahead of them already. If they both win, presumably Baylor stays ahead, just depending upon the game. All right, Ole Miss is at number 8. Now, they really can't do anything. Again, obviously, they can't do anything. They're idle, just like Ohio State and Notre Dame, the next 2 teams coming up. They don't play, but Ole Miss could move up. It's just going to depend on what happens. Now, they lost to Alabama. Now, they are already behind Ohio State and Notre Dame, and both those teams don't play. Ole Miss can move up if Oklahoma State loses, but then it's going to depend on Baylor, how far they're going to move up. Now, essentially, Ole Miss would need Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State to all lose. And they would probably need Oregon to lose as well, to Utah. You can't do anything about the Big 12. They're going to get a champion. They're going to have a 1-loss champ in Oklahoma State, which is going to have a great argument to get in, or you're going to have a Baylor and a 2-loss champ, which will have a better argument than Ole Miss. So essentially, Ole Miss needs Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State to all lose. They're probably going to be behind Baylor, but then behind them, they need Oregon to lose so the Pac-12 just cancels itself out. At that point, they could get in. They could. If all of those teams lose, I would say Michigan's the Big Ten is out. Cincinnati's going to be out. So that is 2 spots open right there. Who slides up? Notre Dame slides up. Now there's 1 spot remaining. All right. Or sorry, I take that back. Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State all lose, right? There's 3 spots open. Notre Dame slides in. I'm not even talking about 1 through 4 in order, but Notre Dame will get in. They'll get one of the spots. Now there's 2 spots remaining for a 2-loss Baylor team, right? Big 12 champs. A 2-loss Bama team, which lost to Texas A&M and the SEC title to Georgia. Does the committee still give them enough juice? A 2-loss Ohio State team that lost to Michigan, who just lost in this scenario to Iowa. So maybe Ohio State drops. And then a 2-loss Ole Miss team. At that point, let's just say Ohio State's knocked out because Michigan loses. So it weakens their resume. You look at, but again, Ole Miss lost to Alabama, who just lost to Georgia. So now you have 4 teams for 2 spots. I know it's tough to follow, but you have basically in this scenario, you'd have a 2-loss Baylor, a 2-loss Ohio State, a 2-loss Bama, and a 2-loss Ole Miss. 2 of those 4 are going to get in. That's the scenario you need. But then again, if in that scenario, if Ole Miss gets in, Alabama has to get in because they beat them head-to-head. And the more you break it down, unless the committee does something absolutely ridiculous, the committee's not going to put 3 SEC teams in there. They might keep Alabama. If they're going to keep another SEC team in there, they're going to keep Alabama in there over Ole Miss. Unless Alabama's absolutely crushed. Which could be totally, I don't think they're going to get crushed, but that's possible. But it just seems like the more you break it down, Ole Miss has the least amount of chance out of the top 10 to get in. And they're ahead of Baylor and Oregon. They would need Baylor to look sloppy. Baylor to look sloppy. They have a case. They have a case. If you're going to talk about head-to-head between Ole Miss and Baylor, you probably prefer Ole Miss, but Ole Miss might just be stuck in neutral at number 8. Ohio State, meanwhile, they might be in the same situation. Out of the idle teams, it seems like only Notre Dame is gonna benefit from teams losing. Because Ohio State could still get in, but they would need Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State to all lose. Again, another total chaos. But they also lost to Michigan head-to-head. Now, in this scenario, Michigan could drop below Ohio State because they lost to Iowa. And Iowa's ranked number 13. But then again, is Iowa going to go in front of Ohio State? Now, I'm not saying Iowa's going to jump from 13 all the way to 4. I don't think that could happen. I really don't. That'd be something out of a movie. It really would be. So Ohio State, just without breaking it down too much, they're pretty much in the same situation as Ole Miss, where they need they need so much to happen to even have a shot, to even be considered, and they still might not get in. They just might be stuck in neutral just based on head-to-heads, which was Michigan, mostly, right there. We'll go to Notre Dame, number 6. They are pretty simple. They just need a loss or two. I take that back. They need 2 losses. They need a combination of Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State to lose. At least 2 of those teams have to lose, and they should get into the number 4 spot. Now, Baylor, again, if they beat Oklahoma State, they could rise. They could go all the way up to 4 or 3. Notre Dame also has to be mindful of Oregon, because Oregon could, like I said, Oregon could make a big jump. And this could be the year we get a 2-loss conference champ into the playoff. You know, Penn State is shaking their heads right now. Penn State cannot believe it. And I wouldn't blame them, because they were a 2-loss Big Ten champ, and Ohio State, who they beat head-to-head, got in over them. Isn't that amazing? And now we're talking about possible 2-loss champs getting in this time. So we'll see what happens. But again, Notre Dame would need that combination of, just 2 of those 3 teams in Alabama, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. If 2 of those 3 lose, they should get in. Now, as far as number 5, Oklahoma State, it is pretty simple. They need to win, obviously. And they also need a loss. Now, granted, they just need one team to lose. As long as it's not Georgia. If Georgia loses, Bama and Georgia are both getting in. Then you need to root for Michigan to lose or Cincinnati to lose. Then they'll get in. But essentially, they just need one of the top. They need one of the 2 through 4 teams to lose. Because again, if Georgia loses to Alabama, those 2 are getting in. And then if Michigan and Cincinnati win, your top 4 is set. Your top 4 right now is going to be your top 4 on Sunday. So Oklahoma needs a win, and then one of the 2, 3, or 4 teams to lose. So Michigan, Bama, or Cincinnati, as long as one of them lose and Oklahoma State wins, the Cowboys and Mike Gundy's mullet will get into the college football playoff. Now, granted, the committee could think they're more impressive over Cincinnati. I don't envision this happening. It'd be a very scummy thing to happen from the committee if Oklahoma State were to beat Baylor pretty good. We're talking about a very convincing win. They're 12-1. They win the Big 12, and Cincinnati wins over Houston. Finished 13-0. Again, Houston is ranked, folks. Don't forget, Houston is number 21. But let's say if Cincinnati wins that game and it's close, but Baylor gets dominated by Oklahoma State, I would not rule out the committee thinking, well, maybe Oklahoma State should go in over Cincinnati, Power 5 school, essentially a bigger brand. I know they're not supposed to think like that, but I would not be shocked if they flip. I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be stunned. I'd be very surprised if that happened in that scenario. But I wouldn't put it past the committee to make that to have that happen. Either way, they need to win Oklahoma State, and they need one of Cincinnati, Alabama, or Michigan to lose, and they'll get in. Cincinnati, to me, it's simple. You win and you're in. That's the way it should be this year. You win and they're in. They can make history. First group of 5 teams to ever make it. They'll be 13-0. They'll probably stay at the 4. They'll probably stay at the 4 seed, depending upon what happens with Alabama and Georgia. I would say, let's say in the scenario if Alabama beats Georgia, Bama's probably going to be the 2. Let's just assume Michigan wins. Michigan probably moves to 1. Bama goes to 2. And actually, no. Then, yeah, you would have Cincinnati go to 3, and then Georgia go to 4. And the committee's basically like, yep, we're going to get that Alabama-Georgia rematch in the finals. It's going to happen. That's what they're thinking. But they would avoid a rematch in the semis. But basically, Cincinnati, yeah, win and you're in. Even if it's close, I would say a 13-0 Cincinnati team at number 4 right now should get in, even if they are the 4 seed right there. But they should move up. I think as long as I would say no matter what happens, as long as they win and they're in, they're going to move up to at least the 3 seed. If not the 2, depending upon some craziness. I don't think they're going to move to 2. Unless Georgia beats Alabama and Michigan loses, Cincinnati wins, Cincinnati could be the 2 seed. It's quite possible. That's the only way. But I think when it's all said and done and they win, they're going to be they will be the 3 seed. They will be 3 seed. Alabama, it's simple for them too. Winning, they're in. If they lose, they're going to need things to happen. They're going to need chaos behind them. And then the committee could essentially consider them as a 2-loss team to still get in. I'm not kidding. They could still get in. Quite possible. But essentially, it's a win and you're in situation for Alabama. Simple as that. Michigan, same thing. Win and you're in. If they lose, I think they're done. Alabama's the exception to this rule because, again, it's Alabama. They have the pedigree. They're a better team on paper, I'd say, than Michigan, despite the fact that Michigan's ahead of them right now. But Michigan, of course, had the Ohio State win. But I think it's win, you're in, lose, and you're out, because then Iowa has a case. Not really a case, but I think Michigan would fall. In the case of Alabama, you lose to the number 1 team. In the case of Michigan, you lose to the number 13 team. So that's why Alabama would have more precedence over a team like Michigan. So Michigan, win, you're in, boom. Georgia, as Johnny Roast Beef said in Goodfellas, this is a lock. Stone cold lock. I can't envision any type of scenario where Georgia is out. They're under 12-0. They're number 1 in the country. If they win, they're in. Obviously, they're the clear-cut number 1 right now. They're the clear-cut number 1 if they beat Alabama. If they lose to Alabama, it's like, all right, you lost to the number 3 team in the country. You're dropping no lower than 4. All right, there's a scenario where I think Alabama could go up to 1. If Alabama wins, Michigan loses, Alabama's going to be 1. They're going to drop Georgia to number 3. That's going to happen. And they'll put Cincinnati at number 2 as long as they win. But the committee will do whatever it takes to make sure they don't play each other again in the semifinals. They're going to try to set up a date in the national championship game if they both win, of course. But Georgia's in. Win or lose, Georgia is in. They set themselves up beautifully this whole season. They're the best team in the country all season long. They are in no matter what. All right, that's it for college football playoff scenarios. We're going to dive into my picks next. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'll give you my 5. All the conference championship games, again, broadcasting note, pre-taping on a Friday just because Pac-12 championship is tonight on Friday night, Oregon, Utah. So we're going to do that game first when we come back, and we'll dive into the rest of the Power 5 conference championship games on the other side of this break. You're listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Final segment of the show here on College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you, taking up to 9 a.m. Getting ready for the conference championship weekend here in college football. Broadcasting note, we are pre-taping this on a Friday just because the Pac-12 championship game is tonight and the rest of the Power 5 games are on Saturday, so we didn't want to miss out on Pac-12 action. Wanted to get that line in based on my picks, but of course I'll give you my picks, of course, for the other games, Big 12, SEC, Big 10, and ACC on Saturday. But we wanted to jump out in front of the Pac-12 game in case we can win some money on that. I mean, of course, just me because I'm the only one hearing this at the moment. But that is quite all right, folks. You'll see if I'm dead wrong, or you'll learn to listen to me or not listen to me on Pac-12 games in the future once you hear this. All right, so we'll start out with that Oregon-Utah game, and I just broke down the college football playoff scenarios, how Oregon could possibly still get in. Just total chaos and anarchy ahead of them after a win over Utah, and that is what I think they are going to do. I say they do beat Utah. They're plus 2.5 right now. That game is going to be played in Vegas at Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play. But again, I know Utah smacked them. It was in Utah. It was one of those letdown games for Oregon because everything just broke right for Utah. Then it was basically it was like a snowball going down a hill, right? And it turned into an avalanche. All right, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That punt return changed everything, put the game away. Final nail in the coffin. Forget all about that. Oregon, different team. This time around, they'll bounce back. I like the plus 2.5. I think they're going to win outright, so give me the Oregon Ducks to claim their third straight Pac-12 championship game. As much as I would love to see Utah actually win, I'm a Kyle Whittingham fan. Utah Utes, hashtag my Utes. I would love to see them win, but I think Oregon's going to win. Third straight Pac-12 title for the Ducks and Mario Cristobal. All right, we're going to go to the Big 12 championship game, Baylor against Oklahoma State. Just mentioned before how Oklahoma State already had their spot. Baylor got it in due to Oklahoma's loss to the Cowboys. So Baylor plus 5.5. But guess what? I like Baylor as another underdog I like for some reason. I know Oklahoma State has a really good offense. It was on display in Bedlam last week, but Dave Aranda's defense for Baylor is something else right now. Oklahoma State has a pretty solid defense as well, but when you combine Baylor's more so elite defense and a pretty solid offense, there's going to be a lot of this will definitely hit the over as well. I believe it was at 46.5. It was pretty low. It's below 50, so I think it is going to hit the over as well. So I will go with Baylor plus 5.5 in this one. I like the Bears, and they're going to give themselves a chance to be a 2-loss team making the college football playoff. Again, they need stuff to happen in front of them as well, but Baylor's going to give themselves a shot. But what a year for David Aranda and company with those Baylor Bears. Plus 5.5, take Baylor. All right, Georgia against Alabama in the SEC championship game down in Atlanta. We know how this goes. These two teams matched up against each other a lot in this game and also in the national championship just a couple of years ago. But I think this is Georgia's time, folks. 12-0, they're going to be 13-0, and likely. I could say it right now. They're I can't even say early national championship pick because the playoff is fast approaching. But I easily see Georgia 15-0, winning it all. They're minus 6.5 here. Would I be shocked if Bama upsets them here? No, I would not. Because it is Alabama. It's Nick Saban. Don't get me wrong. I would not be shocked here. But there's something different about this Georgia team. It's 6.5. The line is not as big as I thought it was going to be. And again, that's more respect to Alabama. But I will take Georgia. They're going to win this game by at least 7. If not, we're talking about 10, 14 points. They're going to pull away in the end. I like Georgia minus 6.5 against Alabama in the SEC championship game. Michigan against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game out in Indianapolis. Michigan, 11-point favorite, double digits. So now that's due to Iowa's offense not being anything special. Michigan's offense is definitely better. They have an elite ground game. Iowa's got a good ground game, but Michigan can at least throw the football with not one, but 2 different quarterbacks, and the same cannot be said for Iowa. It's another battle of great defenses as well. Don't get me wrong. Kirk Ferentz has this team in prime position to finally win a Big Ten or another Big Ten title under him. It's been a long time. They've lost to Michigan State, 6 years ago now in 2015. They're finally back in this game. Michigan here for the first time under Jim Harbaugh. I don't think the spotlight is going to be too big for them. They're not going to be coming down off an emotional high against Ohio State. I think they are going to roll in this game. Going to be a good game. I would say it's going to be a very good game, but Michigan in the end is going to take this one, and I do like them with the points. So give me Michigan minus 11 over Iowa in that one. Pitt, Wake Forest, ACC championship game. That is a minus 3 there for Pitt, and that's where we're going. We're going to take the Pitt Panthers, and basically this is a matchup between the two quarterbacks. Now, this is going to be a game filled with lots of offense. People might be saying, well, why should I watch this if Clemson's not in it? Well, that's exactly why you should watch it, because Clemson, aside from last year against Notre Dame, is not challenged in these games pretty much at all. Actually, no, they weren't even challenged last year against Notre Dame, but at least had reason to watch because it was Notre Dame. Folks, all right, you had reason to watch last year. This one, you have reason to watch. Pitt and Wake Forest is going to be a scoring bonanza. Kenny Pickett back there for Pittsburgh and Sam Hartman back there for Wake Forest. I would say they might combine for 10 touchdowns, folks. 10. I'm saying it right now. They will combine for 10 touchdowns, 5 apiece, if not 6 and 4, going in one direction. They're both tremendous quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett is soaring up draft boards right now, and this game is basically a matter of, all right, who do you think is going to have the better quarterback? Who's going to play better under the bright lights? And to me, it's going to be Kenny Pickett for the Pitt Panthers, so I like him. Give me Pitt minus 3. So quick recap on those picks. We have Oregon plus 2.5 against Utah. Baylor plus 5.5 against Oklahoma State. Georgia minus 6.5 versus Alabama. Michigan minus 11 versus Iowa. And Pitt minus 3 versus Wake Forest. Those are the 5 Power 5 championship games. And to me, folks, this is a wonderful slate. Wonderful slate of college football this weekend. Now, Georgia, Alabama, okay. I know we see it a lot. But Baylor, Oklahoma State. It's finally not Oklahoma in there. Pac-12, I know we see Oregon, but Oregon's at least nice. People like Oregon. And the Pac-12's on a Friday night, so it's a little bit different. You have Utah in there, though. Utah is very interesting. Big Ten, this is where, again, I know Clemson's on the ACC championship game, but it's Pitt, Wake Forest, so the markets aren't exactly there, but it'll be a good game. All right, I like both those teams. But the Big Ten, folks, that's where the Big Ten really stands out here among the rest when you're talking about differentiating the conference championship games this year. It's a renaissance season, as our boy Josh Pate at 24/7 Sports says. It's a renaissance season, and this year is the renaissance season for the Big Ten and the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan, Iowa. Everybody was expecting Ohio State, Wisconsin. That's pretty much what it was. Or maybe Ohio State, Iowa. At one point, we're like, oh, maybe it's Michigan State or maybe Penn State. Nobody thought Michigan. All right, really, nobody thought Michigan State until towards the end of the year. But everyone pretty much figured Ohio State and Ohio State alone when it came to the Big Ten championship game. It's Michigan this year, folks. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to win this game big time. All right. I basically mentioned it in my picks because the spread is 11. So winning big is probably winning by 14. They're going to do that, folks. And Jim Harbaugh is going to be dancing his way to the college football playoff. I'll go on a limb right now and say they're going to win this game and they're going to win their first playoff game. Michigan will be playing for a national championship game. I mean, maybe I'm just feeling it right now with the Wolverines, but I say Michigan is going to be playing for a national championship game. Not going to win. They're probably going to play Georgia, but they're not going to win. They will not win, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have the Michigan Wolverines at 13-1 playing for the college football playoff national championship game against 14-0 Georgia. That's my early pick. Early pick going into the conference championship weekend without even having the playoffs set yet. I think that's what's going to happen. Michigan and Georgia. And I can't wait to be wrong when I look back at this recording on Sunday. Boy, that's going to be brutal. All right, that's going to do it for me. Enjoy the games. I know at this point you've already seen what happened in the Pac-12. I didn't. This was on a Friday. My only time I'm going to make a broadcaster's note that it's pre-taped on a Friday. Oregon, Utah, Oregon plus 2.5. Hopefully when this show does debut on Saturday morning, Oregon is a winner in that one, and we go 4-0 the rest of the way on Saturday with Baylor, Georgia, Michigan, and Pitt. Give me those teams. Have a great day, folks. You've been listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.